Hello Pixies, and welcome to or back to my channel. It's Zoe here, and today we are going to be doing a very excited video that is attached to my March of the Fairies reading challenge. Long story short, March of the Fairies reading challenge is March of the Fairies for short, is a reading challenge that I came up with where we read fairy books for the month of March. I am fully aware that I am going to be one of the only people who does this challenge, but I thought it would be fun anyway. It's going to be an annual thing on my channel, so even though I have like barely any subscribers and I'm an itty bitty YouTuber, I thought it would still just be fun to start it. So it's just reading fairy books for the month of March. You can read any fairy book ever, like I can read it, but I thought it'd be fun to come up with some prompts. So I actually came up with 7 book prompts. I also have some activity prompts as well. If you want to know more about March of the Fairies, I highly recommend my video where I talk about my inspiration, everything that I mean. In that video, I'll have it linked down in the description box. So in this video, I'm going to be giving book recommendations to go along with the prompts that I picked. Obviously, don't have to follow prompts at all. If you have any interest in even just reading one fairy book whatsoever, you don't have to follow a prompt. But I thought it'd just be fun to do a little video where I do recommendations for this. So we're just going to start in the order of the prompts. So I have 6 categories, but I'll touch briefly on the first prompt here in just a second. So without further ado, let's just get started. So the first prompt for March of the Fairies that I came up with was continue a series, but I believe I mentioned in the other video that you can, if you're not in the middle of a series right now that happens to have some kind of fae or fairy-like creature, then you could always reread a series that you've enjoyed or start a series you've never read before. And obviously, I can't really give recommendations for that because I don't know what you've read. I might do a thing where I pop up on the screen my popular series or whatever if you don't read a lot of fairy books, or maybe some lesser known series, and I'll have them popped up here on a cute little thing and you can look at them or decide for yourself. But obviously I'm not really going to be touching on that, and I'm not going to tell you what series I'm going to be continuing. You'll just have to watch the first video to see. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into the actual recommendations. So the second prompt on this list, but the first one we're going to be recommending, is fairy books with a historical-like setting. Now, historical-like, it can be set in our world, but it doesn't have to be our world. Like, it can be set further in time in our world, or it can just be set in a different world where, you know, it gives the vibe, or it gives the appearance of, like, Victorian era, or Renaissance, or literally any time period. Timely, ambiguous, whatever you want. But I have 2 books here with me, and a third that I can recommend, even though that one's pretty popular. The first one I actually mentioned in the introduction video, and that is The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Perry. And in this book, we follow Biddy, and Biddy has lived her entire life on the Isle of High Brazel with her guardian Rowan and his familiar Hutchincroft. And this one can also, blend between 2 of the prompts because we have Animal Companion coming up, and this one can also fit that because Hutchincroft most often takes the appearance of a rabbit, so you can also keep that in mind. She loves her life, but she's also always wanted to see the world beyond this Fae island of High Brazel. And by I mean Fae island, I mean the Fae used to live there and left the structures of High Brazel, but they have long since left this world, which is why it counts as a Fae book, because we know some of their history and see glimpses into the past with them still being there. And in this book, and she always wants to go beyond, but she can't leave the Isle, according to Rowan. But everything changes one night when Rowan doesn't return home from the mainland, and she has to go on an adventure. This is a highly underrated book, in my opinion. This book is beautiful. It's glorious. I've talked about this multiple times on my channel. It's probably one of my favorite books of all time. It's so emotional and wonderful. The writing is beautiful, and it has those fae elements, and it definitely has that historical type feel. I want to say it's like It alludes to being like, I believe, the 1800s or maybe like 1900s, like early 1900s. Maybe not 1800s, but it definitely has a historical vibe to it, and it's just really, really nice. It's enchanting. It's beautiful. I would highly, highly recommend this book. Technically, this book is set during the autumn, which may not give you really the most springtime feelings, but it's barely even mentioned that it's autumn, so you can also kind of read it as a spring read. I feel like it's kind of ambiguous in that way. So that's the first book. And then the other recommendation I have is The Fairy Bargains of Prospect Hill. And this is definitely a historical book set in historical America. Don't remember the timeline, I'm sorry, but it's around the time where railroads have become really, really prevalent, and like some people have cars, but not everyone has cars, and they're kind of like old school, and you have like driving scarves and everything. So, you know, that time period, so like early 1900s, once again. But in The Fairy Bargains of Prospect Hill, we are following two sisters. This is also multiple points of view, which also fits into a later prompt as well, if you want to double cross prompts, or if you have a lot of historical ones but not really many multiple points of view, this is an option for that too. But there is no magic in the world anymore, but on Prospect Hill they still do the little bargains with the Fae, and we have one sister who is going to marry this man. He is rich. He's going to one day inherit this wonderful, powerful company. She thinks she's had life made because he's wonderful. And she also has a sister who's already married, who's going to live on Prospect Hill forever, working in their family orchard, who has a daughter. And it's supposed to be this wonderful life. But then everything goes sour when they realize the man that the younger sister is going to be marrying isn't really all that he seems. So they have to call in one heck of a bargain with the Fae. So the Fae are very important in this book, even though we don't see them till quite later. And they're like creepy. They are creepy. They're weird. Like, this isn't, oh, we're gonna fall in love with a fairy prince. This is nothing like that. This is nothing like that. But I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was well written. Some of the characters can be slightly annoying at times, in my opinion, but overall, I think this is a really good book, and also really shows really good family relationships, and I would highly recommend this one. And the popular book that I would recommend that I don't have physically with me is Half a Soul. I feel like everyone knows Half a Soul is, but it's about a girl, and when she is young, she encounters a fae, and they take half of her soul, and this leaves her with one eye being totally gray while the other one being colored, but it goes beyond physical appearance because they have half her soul, so she's kind of socially awkward, socially inept, and it's kind of told in like Regency era, so there's like the seasons for like marrying and stuff, and her cousin, who she's been living with all this time, is gonna start her season, so she has to go along. But when she goes along, she catches the attention of like the person who's like some government officials. They're like they're sorcerer, and he pays special interest to the main character in this book. And that's a really rushed explanation because I read that book years ago. I read it years ago, but I absolutely loved it. It definitely has those Regency vibes. It definitely has those Fae vibes. There's also a mystery element. It's really good. It's really enchanting. And it's a really good pick, honestly, if you want a fairy book with a historical setting. And that book, out of the three that I listed, has the most Fae elements. Now let's continue on to the third prompt, which is middle grade or children's. And I have two books here that I'm going to list. The first book I have here is a classic in my opinion, and that is The Two Princesses of Bamar by Gail Carson Levine. And in this book, we are in the world of Bamar, and these two girls on the cover here are princesses. One of them, our main character, Addie, she's a bit shy, and then we have her sister Meryl, who is quite brave, and she wants to have all these adventures, but in the world of Bamar, they are battling a thing called the Grey Death. It isn't contagious person to person, but it's like this disease that won't stop. It first starts with a fever, and then a slumber, then a few waking days, and then they're gone forever, and there is no cure for the Grey Death, and it's this thing that's been plaguing them, and the plague won't end until rain once again falls on Bamar. And they're quite young, I think they're teenagers, but everything basically goes bad one day when Meryl catches the Grey Death. And so Addie decides to go on a quest to save her, and her theory on how to save Meryl, because she loves Meryl more than anything in this world, is that she is going to go find the fairies, because the fairies haven't been seen in Bamar since the start of the Grey Death, and she believes after all this time how everyone's looked for a cure and there's been no rain in this land, their kingdom is doing very badly. If she can find the fairies, then they can cure her sister and bring prosperity once more to Bamar. This is such a wonderful middle grade story. This book is very nostalgic to me. I did read this when I was a kid. My mom also read this to me when I was a kid. But I think it's a really fun middle grade. It's technically a part of a series, even though this kind of stands on its own and I've never read anything beyond it. But I would highly recommend this for this video. And then we have the 13 Treasures series by Michelle Harrison. And in this book we follow Tanya, and Tanya can see fairies, but not many other people can, and she thinks she's the only one ever who can see them. But they're not the kind of fairies we've gotten used to in middle grade stories. They're very trickstery, they're quite mean, and they've been aggravating her and getting her into trouble her entire life, because everything they do gets blamed on her, because they know that she can see them, so they bother her relentlessly. And her mother at the beginning of the story becomes so sick of her that she decides that she's going to spend the entire summer with her mother, Tanya's grandmother, in this house that is by the woods. But when she gets there, she realizes that these fairies are in fact real and that there is a mystery to be solved. This entire series is really, really good. Again, another one I read as a child and really nostalgic. I really want to reread this as an adult. I did reread The Two Princesses of Bamar last year, but whatever. It's really, really good though. I highly recommend this. If things look different, I had to take an itty bitty bit of a break because my camera battery died and it was my last one. So one had to charge. But anyways, let's just continue on with the video with the fourth prompt for March of the Fairies Reading Challenge and that is a fairy book with green on the cover. I know without a doubt that there's many books with green on the cover, but I wanted this to mostly be books I've read that I genuinely enjoy and recommend. And obviously, The Magician's Daughter has green on the cover. Half a Soul, the cover is green. The Fairy Bargains Process Hill also has green on the cover. So like I said before, there's a lot of crossover. But the main book I wanted to talk about for this prompt is A Feather So Black by Lyra Celine. This was one of my favorite books of 2024 because I think this first book is absolutely amazing. In this book we follow Fia, and Fia is a changeling. She is a fae who was left in the mortal realm because when she was young there was this great war between fae and humans, and the fae decided to close the 12 gates between the fae realm and the human realm. But before they did so, they kidnapped 12 human girls and brought them to the Fae realm. And the one that Fia was left in place of, she was the only one that was an actual living being left in place of those 12 girls. She was left in place of the queen's daughter. And instead of abandoning her or killing her, the queen decided to keep her and transform her into one of her spies, basically. I know in the past I said spy master, but I don't think that's quite right. It's been a long time since I've read this. But she's basically working for the queen, who she calls her foster mother. But at the beginning of this book, her mother learns that there's actually a 13th gate into the Fae realm, and you have to be Fae in order to cross over, so Fia fits that bill. So she sends Fia on a quest. Fia needs to go to the Fae realm in order to retrieve her true daughter, the girl she was traded in place of, as well as find a treasure, which is a Fae object of extreme power, and bring it back to her so she can finally conquer the Fae realm and have this very powerful magical relic. But Fia also has to go on this quest with Rogan, and Rogan is her sister's, the one who she's going to rescue, betrothed. They've been betrothed since they were basically born, who Fia was in love with in childhood, and who has basically abandoned her and was also her best friend. But he basically abandoned her to return home all this time, and now they're being forced to go on this venture together, but he doesn't know that she was also tasked in retrieving a treasure. This was beautiful. I believed that this was the way that romantasy should go in. I did have some problems with the second book. That is no secret. That vlog will be out before this video with A Crown So Silver, but I believe the series as a whole is going to be good, and I'm really holding out hope that the third book is going to be really, really good. But this book was absolutely fantastic. It's really, really special for romantasy, I believe. Like, this is a truly special book, in my opinion. It takes place over the course of a year, because they can only cross over into the Fae realm on full moons. It has beautiful concepts. It has great storytelling, great characters. There's a lot going on. And like the Fae here are just like, yes, a lot of them are the beautiful high Fae that we've kind of gotten used to, but that was popularized by like Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, but also they're a bit more strange than that. We get more of that Celtic influence than those books. And there's also Fae belong in the wilds, and when they get in cities, they become weird. And I like those aspects. I think this is really creative, really fun, and really a great pick. And now we have prompt number 5. Yes. We have prompt number 5 with set during winter. Now, there's a lot of books that could be listed here, even books I've already talked about. Like, you can even say A Feather So Black can fit into this category because it takes place over the course of a year and it is winter for part of that time. And I meant to explain this in my original video, but it doesn't have to be winter the entire time. And also, if there's like a winter court or winter sector, that also counts, even if they aren't there the entire time. As long as they're there part of the time and it is a wintry landscape or just ice and snow, that completely counts. That's completely fair. So I have 2 books to talk about for this category, and both of them are like my highest recommendations of the entire video. And first up, we're going to talk about a book I've talked about quite a few times on my channel once again, and that is Winter Song by S.J. Jones. In this book, we follow Liesl, and Liesl is a musician, a pianist to be exact, but she can't really study piano because this is like 1800s? I don't know. It's a long time ago, set in Germany. Can also fit in the historical category. She can't study piano, so she's teaching her younger brother, who's also like a prodigy like she was, how to play the piano. And she loves her brother more than anything, but she also has an older sister, or younger sister. I think she's older. But a long time ago, when Liesl was a child, she came across the Goblin King in the woods, but she didn't know he was going to be the Goblin King, and she promises herself in marriage to him because the Goblin King needs a human bride every so often. But when he comes back many years later, she refuses to go with him, so he takes her sister instead. And so she has to go on a quest to save her sister and become the bride of the Goblin King. Goblins do fit in the realm of fairies, technically, so this is a fantastic choice. They're creepy. They go against so many conventions with Fae, like, not beautiful. They live in, like, this underground world. This is a beautiful book. This is a part of a duology. I haven't read the second book, but I feel like this book stands on its own. I've read this book twice. The writing was beautiful. The concepts were beautiful. It was dark. It was romantic. It was literally everything. I loved it so much. I think this is a great pick and really, really captures those wintry vibes. And now, if you're not going to listen to me about a single book on this list, you should listen to me about this book, because if you've seen my previous vlog, like my latest vlog before this, then you would know that I have already found my favorite book of the year, and that is Wings of Starlight by Alison Saft. This book is amazing. I love it so much. And this is a Pixie Hollow book, so those Disney fairies. A lot of us, if you're around my age, you probably grew up with it between the Pixie Hollow books and also the Tinkerbell movies. And this is a prequel to all of that. We are following Clarion, and this is before she is queen, because Queen Clarion is obviously the queen in the Pixie Hollow universe books. But this is before she's crowned queen, and explains why she's going to be queen and why she is different. And in this book, her coronation is approaching very, very quickly, but she has been kind of separated from her fellow fairies because she's the only one other than the current queen who has her particular talent, and the queens last a lot longer than other fairies, and they aren't as influenced by the mortal world as other fairies. And like everything is going great until a monster emerges from the winter woods. The winter woods where none of the warm season fairies can go without their wings freezing and never being able to fly again. So it's like kind of this separation, which mirrors the separation that she's feeling. And so Clarion meets with the warden of the Winterwood to find out what is going on and also to try and solve the monster problem herself so she can prove to herself that she can be queen. But Mallory, the Winter Warden, is more welcoming and warm than she could ever dream, and she starts to imagine a future where everything is different while also trying to save all of Pixie Hollow. I don't know if I explained that the best. This book is wonderful. I want to reread this. Like, I'm probably going to reread this at least one more time this year. And I've already read it this year, so I feel like that's really saying a lot. And we are in all 4 seasons in this book. Autumn least of all, to be fair. But between the seasons we're in the most are summer and winter. And it's absolutely fantastic. This book is fantastic. I can't recommend this enough. This is the most fairy you're gonna get. Like the cutesy little pixie like fays with wings. A lot of fae books, I've realized, fairies don't have wings. That needs to change. And also we need more books set in Pixie Hollow. This was fantastic. I loved it. It went with every bit of Pixie Hollow lore. Like, it didn't change everything. Like, it incorporated every bit of lore that already existed and media that has already existed while still expanding upon the world and also for a different audience. But I think it nailed it on the head. And I think everyone needs to read this book. This book is wonderful. Just absolutely wonderful. Without a shadow of a doubt. I could gush about that book for about 20 minutes. It's just really that good. Like, seriously, it's that good. But now, let's continue on to prompt number 6, is a book with an animal character of some kind. This can be talking animals, this could be an animal companion, someone that has an animal as a pet, whatever. In this one, I have a bit of a controversial take, but we're gonna roll with it anyways. And that is House of Earth and Blood, Book 1 of Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. I know this series is controversial. To be fair, I have not continued on with the series yet. I've only read this book. I just reread it actually, so I've read it twice now. And this book can really stand by itself if the series as a whole intimidates you, especially since a lot of people say it gets worse. But I can say, without a shadow of doubt, this feels like a complete story, and this book is fantastic. In this book, we are following Bryce. She was living a good life where she was happy, despite all the prejudice against her for being half human, half fae. But then tragedy strikes in her life, and her life basically falls apart because everyone she cares about is gone now because of a murder that took place. So we get some of that beginning stuff, we see the murder, and then we get into it 22 months later after these events, and the murders have started up again, which means they didn't catch the original person who did this. So Bryce is pulled into the Fae by the government because she is the only one who has seen the creature that was summoned to kill them. So they think that she can help out in finding this case, and they assign her one of these angels that was once a part of a rebellion and now are working in service of the Republic, and that is Hunt. And he is dangerous and gloomy and lightning-y. And this is a really, really fun book. Very much urban fantasy. I thought it was a really good take for Sarah J. Maas. I thought it was a really, really good book. And she has an animal companion. She has a chimera as a pet who is named Syrinx. And that's a really good choice. This book is really good. I literally cried. I don't know about the rest of the series, but I will tell you that that book stands on its own, and it's really good, and it has an animal companion, and that's a bit of a harder prompt. Also, I want to say that you can also do shifters for this prompt, because I know Fate Shifters is really popular in the genre. I just haven't really read any. I own Curse of the Wolf King, which is also a winter book. I've read part of it. It wasn't really my vibe. I want to retry it, but if you like any of the ones in that universe, you can read those. And with that, we are on to the very last prompt, which is a fairy book with multiple points of view. And I have 2 books for this one, and one of them is a book I actually haven't read yet, and this is a book I will be reading during March of the Fairies, so you're getting a little bit of a sneak peek right now, because that is The Divine Shallows. This is not a popular book at all, but I believe this is going to be a hidden gem. I read the first page, and it was written really well, so I doubt the book is going to be bad, and the people who have rated it and have reviewed it on Goodreads have mainly good things to say about it. It's a bit world building heavy from the gist of it, but it's going to be a part of a large series, so that might be expected, and this is also a debut novel by Alexandra M. Tran. In this book, there is a trial, the divine trial, that happens every 7 years. And this trial is run by the moon goddess, and the people who can participate are the people who have her markings, the moon markings. And if they succeed in the trial, they become sorcerers and sorceresses, and they become very, very powerful. In this book, we follow 2 characters, Ilaria and Elwyn, and they're sisters. Ilaria was the firstborn in this family. She's supposed to be queen one day, but upon her birth, the moon goddess forsakes her and decides not to give her her markings, which leads her to having a rather shitty life, even though she was supposed to have everything. And she wants nothing more than to prove herself, and that's all going to change because the moon goddess, for the first time ever, has decided that Ilaria can compete in her divine trial, despite the fact that she doesn't have the moon markings. And then we have Elwyn, and Elwyn is Ilaria's younger sister, who is now supposed to be in line for the throne to be queen because of these events that have happened. And she's also going to be participating in the divine trial because the moon goddess did not forsake her. But Elwyn doesn't want to be queen, and she would much rather Ilaria do it, but they've been kind of separated because of all the bad vibes that have been following Ilaria around her entire life, and her parents just don't want them to interact. So then they embark on their separate but like coinciding journeys into the start of the divine trial. It sounds really, really interesting. This is supposed to be romantic-y, but I think it's not insta-love from what I could tell of the reviews. I really, truly think this is going to be a hidden gem. We follow Ilaria's point of view and Elwyn's point of view. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. I'm really looking forward to this book. Also, I think there's going to be dragons based off the cover, so maybe could also go with the animal character. And the final book I have to recommend is one that this book isn't my favorite, but a lot of people do love it, and I don't think it's bad. It's just not exactly to my taste. And that is Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. Carrie Maniscalco. I'm sorry if I butchered that last name. I have a hard time saying words out of my mouth. And this is a continuation, this is a part of the Princess of Sin series. And this is following the world of the Kingdom of the Wicked. Loved the first book of that, hated the 2 others in that trilogy. But this book doesn't hide what it is from the start. And in this book, we're following 2 characters. We're following Prince Envy, which is one of my favorite characters from the Kingdom of the Wicked one. And we are also following, what's her name? Camilla. There's something wrong with Prince Envy's realm. He's one of the 7 princes of hell. There's something wrong with his sector of hell. But then we're also introduced to the fact that there is a Fae island also in this underworld type realm. And they have something to do with why his kingdom is failing. I'm just going to read a description of this because I read this book a year ago and I can't, okay? I can't tell you. Sinner, villain, wicked. The Prince of Envy has never claimed to be a saint, but when a cryptic note arrives signaling the beginning of a deadly game, he knows it will take more than a hint of sin to win and save his failing demon court. Riddles, hex objects, anonymous players, nothing will stand in his way, though none of his meticulous plans prepare him for her, the frustrating artist who ignites his sin like no other. Virtuous, darling, liar. The trouble with scoundrels and blackguards is the fact they haven't a modicum of honor, a fact Miss Camilla Atanas learns after one desperate mistake allows Waverly Green's most notorious rake to blackmail her. To avoid a ruinous scandal, Camilla is forced to enter a devil's bargain with Envy, little expecting his game will awaken her true nature. Together, Envy and Camilla must embark on a perilous journey through the underworld from glittering demon courts to the sultry vampire realm and beyond, while trying to avoid the most dangerous trap of all, falling in love. This is Romantasy. I thought it was good. This is more of a fun book, in my opinion. Nothing wrong with fun books. This book definitely has more spice in it, which honestly isn't really what I like to read, but I know a lot of other people love it. And it's fun, it's good, it has that game type element, and it's told through Envy's and Camilla's points of view, which fits the prompt. And with that is the end of the video. I think these are all really good picks. Of course, there are dozens upon dozens of other books that can fit these prompts, so you really can read whatever you want. You don't even have to follow the prompts. This could just be a good starting off point if you have no idea about any one of the prompts or a few of the prompts. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say on that. I'm really looking forward to March of the Fairies Reading Challenge. I would love it if you'd like to join. But yeah. You can comment down below if you know of any books that you highly recommend that fit any of these prompts. I would love to know, and I'm sure other people would also love to know. You can also like this video. I would really, really appreciate it. And if you want to subscribe to see more March of the Fairies content, I implore you to do so. Is that the right use of that term? I'm not sure. But I guess that's it. So I guess I'm signing off now. Okay, bye.